From the station working for you, this is WRTV News at 5:30, streaming now.
And now at 5:30 on WRTV, a night of dueling town halls from each side vying for the next 4 years at the White House. Our WRTV political insiders sound off on the big events. And we are taking a closer look at how businesses negatively affected by the pandemic can now take advantage of new help. The requirements to qualify ahead this half hour.
Topping our lineup, coming down with a common cold or even allergies will look a lot different due to the pandemic. The new threshold for symptoms and when you'll likely be asked to stay at home or take a virus test. More rural medical centers are being forced to close as people hold off on elective surgeries and checkups. What healthcare workers say is the immediate solution. And grocery store supply has improved since the start of the pandemic, but we're checking out what to expect as we start to see COVID cases rising now.
Now to Democracy 2020 in the race for president. Tonight, both candidates, President Trump and former Vice President Joe Biden, are set to host dueling town halls. Our political insiders weigh in.
Now President Trump will have a town hall and Joe Biden will have a town hall. Will this be must-watch TV? Joey Fox.
They'll spice it up for social media. They'll spend all their money on Facebook ads with their highlights or the lowlights of the other team, and we'll move along and nothing will change, just like almost the entirety of this race.
I mean, they're both going on at the same time on competing networks. It is irresponsible of both networks to not try to figure out a way to have them doing a tete-a-tete.
The problem here is that the president has refused to do a debate if it's not in person. And so to me, it's frustrating. It feels like we're kind of rewarding bad behavior of, I don't want to do it this way, so I'm taking my toys and going home. And we say, okay, here's an extra candy bar. I find it to be very agitating. So no, I don't think it matters. It's just annoying.
As far as the debate goes, as far as virtual town halls go, and the town halls, I frankly don't think a lot of people will tune in. I think along with coronavirus fatigue, there is election fatigue, and there is a strong case of Donald Trump fatigue. That last debate really just laid bare the contrast between the two candidates.
These are our political insiders. We thank them a great deal. And our coverage of Democracy 2020 continues right now. WRTV.
Big changes in our weather today for sure. Certainly cooler and some rain, something that we haven't had a whole lot of here the last couple of months. And you can see those rainfall estimates ranging from around 1/10 of an inch to about 3/10 of an inch here across central Indiana. So not a lot of rainfall, but certainly we will take what we can get. And the last of the showers are really starting to push towards southeastern locations and out of the Hoosier State here, but still a few showers around North Vernon into Greensburg, Connorsville, Liberty, and the Richmond area. The rest of it's just a couple of sprinkles. Now we will start to see those clouds clearing out as we go through the overnight hours. Right now, though, we're still locked into those clouds in Greencastle. 48 degrees downtown, chilly out there, 55 for you in Lafayette. We talk about it being chilly now. It is going to be cold tonight as those temperatures will be dropping upper 20s to lower 30s. So all those counties shaded in purple, a freeze warning going into early tomorrow. Lindsay?
Vice presidential candidate Kamala Harris has canceled in-person events until Monday. The decision was made after 2 people associated with the campaign contracted coronavirus. Harris was scheduled to visit Ohio and North Carolina. Dr. Anthony Fauci is rejecting a herd immunity declaration that the White House has embraced. An online movement called the Great Barrington Declaration opposes lockdowns. It also argues that authorities should allow the virus to spread among young, healthy people. Dr. Fauci calls the declaration ridiculous and risky, saying that it'll put vulnerable people at risk. The Atlanta Falcons are shutting down its practice facility after someone tested positive for COVID. The team said it will continue operations virtually. The NFL had just changed protocols this week to have players isolate if they had had high-risk contact with anyone who has the virus. Nationally, the number of people filing for new unemployment benefits is still historically high. It rose last week to 898,000. This comes as a number of people experiencing long-term unemployment is growing too. The number of people out of work for more than 27 weeks increased by 781,000 in September. It's now at 2.4 million, according to the latest data from the Labor Department. Usually it's harder to get a job the longer you're out of the workforce, but that may not be the case now.
If you are in one of those situations, you should take comfort in the fact that there is a lot more understanding right now from hiring managers. And it's okay to talk about the fact that you are a casualty of the pandemic.
LinkedIn's career expert recommends if you are taking on a side hustle now to pay bills until you can get a full-time job, to try to look for something that you can market to a future employer, something that goes along with a long-term career goal you have.
When it comes to explaining a career gap on your resume, really talk to the recruiter and showcase what you've done in that time to make sure that you're more marketable. Whether it be taking a course or networking with your contacts, you want to really show that you use the time wisely.
Something else that may help you get noticed right now is adding the open to work feature to your LinkedIn profile. LinkedIn has found 40% of people who include that message get more calls and emails from recruiters. Next in our lineup, coming down with a common cold or even allergies will look a lot different due to the pandemic. The new threshold for symptoms and when you'll likely be asked to stay at home or take a virus test.
This is WRTV. Good news if you need help paying your rent. The Indiana Housing and Community Development Authority reopened its rental assistance portal. This is for people who live outside of Marion County. If you're eligible, the program can provide you with up to 6 months in assistance to help cover past due and ongoing monthly rent payments. For info about the requirements and to apply, go to indianahousingnow.org. If you need help in Marion County, go to indyrent.org. And a note, right now there is a wait list for Marion County assistance, but you can still apply and will be notified once applications are reopened.
As we head into cold and flu season, you can expect things will be handled differently at workplaces, schools, daycares, and medical offices because of COVID. Anyone with symptoms like a runny nose or cough or sneezing will likely be asked to stay home.
So I think there's going to be a requirement for any of these symptoms for employee health at the workplace to take a larger role in screening patients, probably a lot more testing.
The head of a primary care clinic in Colorado talked to us about how people should handle these symptoms with COVID. Dr. Scott Joy recommends staying home for 24 hours when you have a cold without a fever. If you have a fever, isolate for up to 6 days or until you've been fever-free for a full 24 hours. If you're coughing or sneezing more than 4 times in an hour, you should probably stay home and see a doctor.
We haven't had a metric like that before, so we're going to experiment with that data point and see what it does to our workforce and our clinic infection control over this season.
Dr. Joy also reminds people to get the flu shot. A study in the New England Journal of Medicine found people who got the vaccine had 25% fewer episodes of upper respiratory infections than those who didn't. That means fewer sick days from work and fewer doctor visits. The hope is that COVID measures like hand washing, mask wearing, and watching your distance will lead to fewer respiratory infections overall. But should you experience those symptoms, you may be directed to urgent care centers instead. The idea is to keep doctors' offices sterile so people with chronic conditions and other issues feel safe coming in to see their primary care physician.
In the last couple of months, people that have been putting off their care, I just diagnosed a gentleman with new diagnosis, pancreatic cancer. We're detecting breast cancer, heart disease, blood pressure that's out of control.
Urgent care centers are equipped with personal protective equipment and are typically faster and cheaper than a visit to a hospital emergency room. But you should call your doctor's office first to see what they recommend based on your symptoms. Still ahead in our lineup, more rural medical centers are being forced to close. What healthcare workers say is the immediate solution. As millions of Americans are struggling to find work, some have stopped looking. They've decided instead to create an opportunity for themselves. Experts say this is evident in the sudden spike of new business applications. Alicia Nieves shows us how this could have an impact on our economic recovery.
Thousands of businesses have closed their doors, but this new bookstore in New York City is hoping to open. The owner, Lee Altschuler, lost her job in March.
I was caught definitely by surprise.
Rather than searching for a new job, she decided to bet on herself, invest her entire savings into a business around her passion for books.
I felt so low when I lost my job. And to be able to turn this into something that makes me feel so lucky and so fortunate is already a huge success.
Some may call her decision inspirational, others crazy, but it's part of a growing trend.
I was working at a local restaurant here in Tampa.
Nicholas Bryan and his brother Greg recently opened a meal kit business around Chef Nick's homemade pasta. Starting a business together was an idea they kicked around for years, but never had the time to fully flesh out. That is until Nick lost his job.
Definitely had a little bit of time to slow down and to actually plan things out.
The business has taken off, providing more than a good income for the siblings.
I feel free. I feel a lot freer than I did a few months ago, like doing what I love on my own time, creating my own dishes, and being financially sustained. It's awesome.
Across the country, there have been at least 3.2 million new business applications filed this year. This time last year, that number was around 2.7 million.
It's hard to know, I think, at the moment as to whether or not this trend that we have seen that is very discernible is going to continue, and it's hard to know exactly what the real impact over time is going to be.
John Deary is the founder for the Center for American Entrepreneurship in Washington, D.C., and says new businesses like Sweet Pickle Books and Pasta Packs have an uphill battle. But if these businesses and others survive, they could be a major factor in our economic recovery.
Startups are disproportionately responsible. They're not the only source, but they're the major source. They're disproportionately responsible for the innovations that drive economic growth and job creation in the economy.
For now, they are helping at least these 3 people survive and find purpose in this pandemic. I'm Alicia Nieves reporting.
Indiana will become home to another safe haven baby box today. It will be installed at Memorial Hospital and Healthcare Center Ambulance Station in Ferdinand. It's just north of Santa Claus. This makes the 46th safe haven baby box in the nation and the 42nd baby box in Indiana. Just last week, a baby was surrendered at a safe haven baby box at Fire Station 74 in Decatur Township. The baby is the 5th to be surrendered this year and the 9th since November of 2017. Baby boxes have alarm systems that notify 911 as soon as a baby is placed inside. And more help is on the way for hospitality businesses in Marion County. Applications are now open for Hospitality Establishment Lifeline Payment Grants. Through it, businesses like restaurants and live entertainment venues can receive up to $25,000 in future unpaid rent or mortgage payments between April and December of this year. The grants are funded with $11 million from the Federal CARES Act and is the latest effort to help local businesses survive.
Obviously, we want to see people continue to be working, and we want to see people to continue to be employed. And I think part of that is, just making sure these businesses can stay open. And so we recognize that some of your biggest hurdles as a business is just paying for your space, especially when your revenue is down.
To qualify, businesses must have lost at least 10% of revenue because of the pandemic. The city says at least 180 businesses have already applied. The deadline is November 6th. You can find more info and a link to apply on our website at WRTV.com. Kyle.
And outdoor dining getting a little more challenging on days like this. The temperature dropping and we've had some of those showers. You can see, though, that we got the showers pushing off to the south and east at this point, but it is a very cool 48 in Indianapolis and Columbus, where you haven't had as much rain through the afternoon. You're at 55 in Lafayette, and there's the clearing line back in Illinois. We'll get in on that tonight and what that will do for temperatures. 33 in the city, but areas like Kokomo, Logansport, Monticello, you'll be dropping down into the 20s by tomorrow morning. So widespread frost and freeze conditions here as we go into our early Friday. We do start off the day with sunshine. Temperatures, though, they're still in the 40s at 11 a.m. Your lunchtime temperature 52 with sunny skies. We'll see just a few clouds passing through during the afternoon, but we are only going to get to around 57 degrees. And if you're heading out for some of those football games tomorrow night, you're definitely going to want to layer up here. Already at 7:30 in the evening, you got 47 in Newcastle and Rushville, 50 degrees for you in in the Greencastle area, and temperatures as we go into Saturday morning will be chilly as well. Middle to upper 30s is what we're expecting. 35 in Indy, right around 40 in Lafayette as we start to get in some slightly warmer temperatures. And that weekend continues the warming trend. 64 on Saturday, 62 Sunday with that 30% chance for some rain, especially afternoon and evening. We'll keep that chance of wet weather going into early next week as temperatures begin to moderate. We're back in the 70s for highs by Wednesday.
Many hospitals across this country are in crisis. Strapped for cash, emergency rooms are being forced to close in the middle of a pandemic. Chris Conti shows us how it's creating life or death consequences for Americans and what healthcare workers say is the immediate solution.
It sits in silence, in emptiness, perhaps in perpetuity. The death of Cumberland River Hospital has thrust this place into darkness.
We are seeing a huge divide in healthcare among Americans.
Johnny Presley is the owner of this small rural hospital located in Salina, Tennessee, a town of 1,400 people, a town that no longer has an emergency room.
When people can't live in the rural communities they grew up in without having adequate access to health care, then it's almost like you're in a prison.
Months of fighting with Medicare for reimbursement payments finally led to the inevitable.
I used over $2 million of my own funds to keep this thing open for 4 months.
Hospitals across the country are struggling now more than ever, as patients are still avoiding elective surgeries because of COVID. Those are the bread and butter of most hospitals' bottom line.
It's thrown all hospitals into a negative cash flow issue.
Not just about the money, though.
When I fell down the stairs, I actually woke up from the fall.
When Stephen Hendrick fell down the stairs earlier this year, help was only a 5-minute drive away.
It means everything. It really does to a small community like this.
With the hospital now closed, though, the nearest emergency room is an hour's drive away. This is the reality of rural health care in America.
So many people are going to die. They're going to die because they don't get the emergency care that they need.
Since 2005, a staggering 174 rural hospitals have shut down nationwide. 15 of those closures happening this year alone, leaving a vacuum of care in their absence. Texas and Tennessee lead the nation in hospital closures. By the end of this year, hospitals across the country are expected to lose $300 billion, a staggering statistic that ripples far beyond the walls of any emergency room. In most rural communities, hospitals are often the single biggest employer in town. When Cumberland River closed, nearly 100 doctors, nurses, and staff were let go.
I think it's awful because we could have a hospital.
By some estimates, 2020 may end up claiming the lives of nearly 200 more hospitals.
To keep our hospitals open in the middle of this pandemic, it's going to take the government to intervene.
With federal aid, Johnny Presley could reopen the hospital tomorrow. But so far, his pleas to politicians have gone unanswered.
I think it's just a travesty that this country is going through. This country is so politically polarized right now that the most basic human needs of food and health care in this country are now being overlooked.
Rural lifelines on life support, with American lives hanging in the balance.
The ability to take care of those folks right now is just not available.
In Salina, Tennessee, I'm Chris Conti.
Next in our lineup, grocery store supply has improved since the start of the pandemic, but we're checking out what to expect as we start to see COVID cases rising now. Barnes & Noble was hit by a cybersecurity attack over this past weekend. Information that may have been compromised includes customers' phone numbers, email addresses, and billing and shipping addresses. Barnes & Noble says that there's no evidence the data was exposed, but it cannot rule it out. Things at the grocery store seem relatively calm now in comparison to how it was back in March. Remember the whole toilet paper fiasco. But as we hear talk about another wave of coronavirus, some are wondering if grocery supply will take another hit. We went to experts who track grocery data. They say what we saw earlier this year was historic.
Those mid-March weeks were the largest we have ever seen in the history of grocery shopping. And I don't expect to ever see big waves like that again.
People first stocked up on just cleaning items. Then they started stocking up on all types of items, including pantry foods and that precious commodity toilet paper. Anne-Marie Roerink says that while it is possible people will stockpile again later this year, toilet paper may not be on the list. Cleaning items may become hard to find again. The timing of all of this really depends on the virus and how cases evolve.
Should it come down to where the virus is big enough of a wave where we might go back down in shelter in place, or where people feel more safe at home than they do out and about, I could see where we're going to see the grocery spending ramp back up.
Earlier this year, holidays like Mother's Day and Father's Day actually contributed to the clearing of grocery shelves. Typically a holiday where we go out to eat, but that wasn't really an option in most places, so people had to improvise.
So all of a sudden, retail had to absorb all those dollars to take care of mom and cook her a fun brunch or dinner. So we had an enormous peak again for holidays such as Mother's Day and Father's Day.
That means holidays like Thanksgiving and Christmas could change how things work out at the grocery store as well. Generally, supply and demand has started to normalize, but grocery sales are still about 10% higher than what they normally are. Prices could still change depending on the demand. Well, the results are in. What happens when a company decides to cut its work week to just 4 days and not expect employees to work longer days, and all with the same pay? Tomorrow, a look at what happened to productivity compared to the happiness of employees.
One wave of rain moving out of central Indiana now. The next wave is going to be moving in this weekend, and I do want to show you, this is Sunday morning. Notice there's some snow picked up by TrueCast back in Iowa. We're not going to be dealing with any of that, but rain will return to the area here as we go into Sunday afternoon and evening. Those temperatures feeling a little better next week as we get around 70 on Wednesday. Thanks for joining us here at 5:30.